Schaefer. Today we're going to talk about processes, and we're going to talk about, one, how to start to create them, how to document them, where to save them, all of that, and some mistakes that we find that people make when they have them. So I just want to make sure that we're live because we were having some technical difficulties this morning. So just want to make sure that we're good. Just check the Facebook page here. It looks like we're live. And I'm just going to share this really quickly. And if you're watching live, say hello, give us a comment. Let us know that you're there. If you're watching the replay, give us a hashtag replay, and feel free to put any comments or questions that you have in the comments, and we will make sure that we answer them.
Almost there. Almost there.
Okay, now we're good. We're good. We're live. We're good. We're talking. Okay. All right. So again, if you have questions, comments, put them in the comments, and we'll be sure to answer. If you are watching the replay and you have thoughts afterward or questions, you can either leave comments for us to come back to and answer, or you can book a call with us. We have free 15-minute consultation, and you're welcome to book that as well. We can put that link in the comments when we're done. So we want to talk about processes. And I also want to note, before I forget, our most recent podcast episode, episode number 10 with Aaron Stewart, we actually talked about processes there too. So I'll put the link to that episode as well. So if you want to listen to that, you're welcome to listen to that interview. It's really awesome. And we again talked about processes. So for us, I know that when we start to create a process, one of the first things we do is talk through what that looks like. So what are the steps that need to happen, start to finish? And sometimes you don't always know the order, but it's good just to brainstorm all the different things that need to happen and then start to put them in the right order of how they need to flow and what needs to happen before the other. So like onboarding, people need to sign an agreement before you can start delegating the work, right? So you'll need to write out those steps. So one way that we do it is using a Google Doc. There's options like a mind map or Lucid Chart. Lucid Chart, I think, is really great. It allows you to build out what that process looks like, and then you can move the squares around, and we can put the link to that as well. There's a link in the podcast show notes. There is a link to Lucid Chart because we discussed it on the podcast. I think that's really the main thing, is to start there. So if you have something, and the way you recognize if you need to document a process is if it's something you do all the time, onboarding, social media management, any sort of project that you do regularly, and delegation and working with your team. So team communication, anything like that is going to be something you want to document. And why we say you want to document it is because it allows, one, to never forget a step. Two, it allows you to easily give a new team member the process without having to kind of micromanage them. You can say, look, here's our process, follow. If you have questions, let me know. And so what we recommend is first to plan it out. And then we recommend documenting it in a couple different ways. So making a video using Loom or Zoom while recording yourself while you're doing it, if it's on the computer, typing it out in a Google Doc. So these aren't ors, these are ands. We think you should do these, have a video and have it written out step by step with screenshots from inside whatever softwares you use or anything like that. And then the other place that we think that they should be documented is inside your project management tool. And anytime there's a process, and it depends on how you use your project management tool, but it should be laid out in your project management tool with the instructions, with the link to the video or the link to the Google Doc, anything like that. So that way, if your project management tool is down, you still have your Google Drive, you still have Loom, you can go back to the videos and watch it, or you can go back to the Google Doc and follow it. But you want it in more than one place to make sure that you have access to it. If one of the systems is down, you can still complete the task. So that's sort of the process of doing it. So again, creating it, detailing it out, figuring out what the actual process can be, and what laying it out lets you do is figure out where there's places you might be able to automate. So if you use a CRM that has some automations, or Zapier can create an automation for you, if you can lay out all the steps, then you'll be able to see places where you can add automation. Did I forget anything in what I just mentioned, Janine?
No, nope. I was just throwing a little, it's like on the practical side for it. It's like we've seen some funny things where when we've come in to create SOPs and we're getting them from, getting the process from the team members. And it's like you want to be sure that the team members understand why we're doing it. Because in one instance, they thought they were going to be replaced, and that just made us sad because it was a fantastic team. And so you want to introduce the concept and the why you're doing it so they understand it too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like letting them know if you're going to make changes internally, letting them know why and what the things are, and ask for their thoughts too, because if they're doing the process, they probably know how to do it efficiently, or maybe they think that there's a better or more efficient way of doing it, and then they can let you know. If you're preparing to hire someone, once you do hire them and you give them the SOP or the standard operating procedure, you can say, hey, if you find a better way to do it, let me know. Because one of the key things about these processes is that they're living, breathing documents and living, breathing processes. And that one of the key things that Janine and I preach is that they need to be delegated to someone. Full responsibility needs to be given to whoever owns that process. And owning it isn't necessarily just doing it, but it's updating it, making sure it's correct, making sure it's the most efficient way to do it, making sure that all the steps are there, following it, all of that. That's the key about delegating the process, is making sure that someone owns it.
Yep. And having that way to get that feedback from the people who are using it is super important.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And then some of the, I was just looking at my notes, some of the mistakes that we notice, one of the big ones is having someone not be responsible for it, because what happens is then there's this process that, some people on the team or you might have memorized, but if you're not constantly going back and pulling it up when you do it to make sure that you followed every step, like I promote our podcast, I put our podcast out, and I mean, I've done it a bunch of times, but I still pull up the process just to make sure that I don't miss a step, because, if I'm going through it quickly, I might forget something, and so having that process is important, but checking in on it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we see, is that they make it and it just sits collecting internet dust, and and there's, you got to have someone there to be looking at it, adding to it, updating it if a new software comes out and there's a better way to do it, or whatever, if Zapier updates the softwares it works with, there might be a better way to do it, and that person that does it all the time is the best person to look at it and update it.
Yep. And statistically, where systems break down, almost 70% of the time it's human error, and it's because it's not getting used or followed properly. So you definitely want them used. And your team members, especially new team members, some of the things that we've talked about onboarding in other episodes, but when they get onboarded, it gives them immediately something to do and something to refer to, because they want to do well, they want to do it right, but often people are hesitant to ask too many questions because they don't want to come across like they don't know how to do stuff.
That's such a good point.
But every business is different in those little details of how they apply their skills. So it gives them some reassurance and something to lean on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that should be a step in your team onboarding process, is review the SOPs that person will be working on. So you can kind of let them dive in, have a look at it, make sure they understand it. And then there can be, if they have specific questions. One of the things I did want to mention is this goes the same for brick and mortar, or like physical processes that you have. So a way to do it is you could record yourself talking on your phone as you walk through the process of whatever that looks like. If you're not in a place where you can type everything, you can record yourself saying, okay, so the first thing I do is I go here, I do this, and then I do that, and then I got to find this. And, you can talk through that. But they work the same way, whether it's on the computer or in person, but they still need to be recorded. And then once you've got that voice recording, then you can type it out. You can print out a paper, hang it inside the office or wherever you need to, so that everyone's on the same page with what the process is for, whether, like I said, it's in person or on the internet, or on the computer. The other thing is having a database of where you keep them. So Janine and I keep it pretty simple. We just have a Google spreadsheet. We have it broken down into categories, and then we have the name of the process with a link to the Google Doc, and then a date of when it was last updated. So one of the things we have in our standard operating procedures at the bottom is when it was last updated, who updated, and what the date was of when it was last updated. And that's really important. So that way, okay, is this an old process or is it newer? Has someone looked at it recently? And when it was reviewed last. So it's really simple, just a spreadsheet, but it allows a quick, easy way to find what, the link to the Google Doc that you're looking for. And then whenever in our project management tool, we always put the link to whatever the process is that the task is referring to. We put the Google Doc link, just try to give as much information to make it easy to complete the process. And that's something that your project manager or integrator would do for you when they're delegating tasks, if you have one. If not, then it's something you should do when you're delegating to your team.
Yep, and reviewing your processes actually helps you stay on top of best practices. We work with, say, digital marketing agencies who are working with clients, or directly with clients who are doing new product launches or new marketing campaigns. And marketing is super dynamic. There's always new things going on, algorithm changes and everything else. So running through your SOPs before you're presenting a project proposal to a client or working with the client is a way for you to ask the question of yourself, is this the best, most current thing?
Right.
And present the best service to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just making sure that it's as efficient as possible. We have a client that has brick and mortar, and she was explaining that she didn't realize until she was doing clothing tagging on her own, she didn't realize that the machine that they used to print the tags and put the tags on was clear across the store in a back room. And then if you go to the back room, then there's other things you need to do, the phone's ringing, whatever. And she's like, I imagine that a lot of time is wasted because it's not located close to where someone would need it. And so just that small inefficiency could mean hours of time, man hours spent, of the person walking back and forth, getting distracted, not getting the task done, not getting everything tagged because they lost track of where they were. I mean, something as simple as that, finding that inefficiency and correcting it could save so much time and money. And that's just one example. It could be the same with any online or on the computer process as well.
Yep, and that's the thing, even with existing systems, it's those incremental improvements that keep you getting better and better and your team getting better at doing what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Ginny, did you have anything else to add? I mean, that was really what I wanted to talk about today. And like I said, the podcast episode number 10 with Aaron Stewart is live, and I'll put the link in the comments to the show, so you can listen to that interview as well. But I don't know, did you have anything else to add about that?
The one thing I wanted to add was specifically when you're going through it, testing it, especially if you're doing it for the first time, if you can test it on someone who's never seen it before, or, want to imagine as if this is for that new team member, because one other mistake is that not breaking it down far enough.
Good point.
So just not to make any assumptions.
Yeah. And to write it as though the person that's going to read it has never done it or seen it. So really, And every time if I write one of our standard operating procedures, I make Janine go through it, or I make one of our team members go through it. Like, hey, can you walk through this? Make sure, because in my mind it makes sense, but I might have done it 100 times. But Janine or Monica or Karen might not have done it. But okay, make sure this makes sense, because it might make sense to me. But if you're looking at it, I might have missed some steps or wasn't as detailed as I should have been. So,
or people just read things differently than you might expect,
absolutely.
and it takes a little bit of that input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you catch the replay, don't forget to give us a hashtag replay. Ask us any questions that you might have, or if you've had trouble creating your processes. We'll put the link to the podcast episode, the link to our 15-minute call, but feel free just to put your questions in the comments as well. And we will catch you next week on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. This is Masterfully Integrated, and thank you so much for joining us. All right. Bye.
Bye.